All right. The algorithms have tanked my channel again. So if you like this content today, make sure you share it with people, subscribe, do all the good things. I shouldn't have to say that, but just a reminder. So we're going to talk about maintaining love amidst a declining marriage rates and happiness rates. So when you go through the data, it was an interesting little discussion or thread in the Twitter space about relationship happiness, and somebody had made the argument that, well, when you ask people if they're happy in the relationships, if a lot of the data shows that people are happy, like the overwhelming data shows that people are happy in their relationships, right? And that's what the idea is. But the problem there is that, is that really true? Right? What is happy? How are they deriving this data? And what is the definition of happiness? How do we quantify and qualify the term happiness so we can do a scientific study on it or have meaningful data when we send out surveys and questionnaires and ask people about their relationships? Because if you ask the average person if they're happy in their relationships, and you don't ask for any other details, or if you ask them if they're happy in their life, I think most people would just say, yeah, sure, I'm happy. Right? It's something like almost like you're supposed to say that. But when you ask qualifying questions and you ask, maybe you put it to a rating scale or something like that, you ask for like satisfaction measures or results measures in different areas of your life that would indicate happiness, or different areas of the relationship that would indicate a good relationship. All of a sudden, this I'm happy in a relationship thing falls apart really quickly. All right. When you put it to actual data and look at things like desire, basically, the different types of love, different types, and I've talked about different types of love based on Greek words. There's, companionship like friendship or storges. And then there's romantic love, more emotional. And there's passionate love, which is more sexual desire. And then there's, of course, obsessive type love, which can be a little bit too a disruption and actually lead to unhappiness if out of control. But there's different types of desire, right? And when you break it down into that, most people are not experiencing the high romantic love or high satisfaction in the area of desire, romance, sex, things like that in their long-term relationships. In fact, the numbers that we got from pretty good study, the best meta-analysis and study I've seen is 15%, basically. You're looking at a 15% happiness rate with like 2% really, really, really happy. I've messed those numbers up before as far as the breakdown going off of memory, but I've looked at it recently and it was like 2% could be more obsessive though. So that could lead to maybe issues potentially, but generally speaking, as far as the desire part, passionate, considering rating high and passionate and romantic love and getting high in all those categories, after the 8-year mark, most long-term relationships don't have that. Most long-term relationships have settled for subpar, maybe companionships at best. Well, here's the problem with that though, too. If it's just a companionship, there really isn't a lot of passion there, but yet you've given away your commitment and they've given their commitment away. What they've basically done then is they've signed off and reserved themselves to not having romantic or passionate love, we'll say, or sexual desire in their lives. They've signed off on the sexual part of themselves in order to be in a marriage, right? And that's what you've done as well, if there's only companionship and not that desire for your long-term person. This is problematic, it really is. This is why women resent guys that they're with a lot of times in these long-term relationships. They see that as they've given up. You hear this victim narrative over and over again, that how much they've given up themselves and how much they're just living life for their children and for their husband and for everybody else but themselves. And you hear this very selfish narrative today amongst women who've been married for a while or in long-term relationships for a while, how they're just giving themselves up all the time, like that their needs and wants are not a concern, and they just sacrifice and they've given themselves up. And when are they going to take time for themselves? When are they going to go on that girls' vacation so they can have time to themselves? Like, well, what the hell are they talking about? Right? Well, what they're talking about is they've given up the romantic selves. They've given up their desire. They've given up their sexual selves. They see sex and romantic companionship as more of a chore, as something that they have to do transactionally in their marriages. And this is why they fail. This is why they don't go well. So I never did my intro. Should I even do my intro? You know what? I won't do my intro today. What I'll do instead is my little commercial real quick, because, if you don't know how to seduce as a man, or if your skills in seduction are average or even above average, if they're not excellent, if they're not dialed in, you're going to have a hard time maintaining romantic and passionate. And I'm using those words because those are the categories in the study and the meta-analysis, but you're going to have a really hard time maintaining passionate and romantic aspects of your relationship after she's gotten familiarity and after she's won the commitment. Women tend to see their sexual selves as something to be used as power in a relationship, and as something to be used in order to get things that they want and need, and to meet their goals, both their life goals and their reproductive goals. And once they meet those, they tend to stop wanting to use sex for themselves. They tend to want to keep it in reserve. And, it's not a conscious strategy. Sometimes it is, but oftentimes it's really unconscious. They feel like if they give themselves up sexually, and if they enjoy their man sexually, and if they become attached to their man in that way, that they will be giving up power in that relationship. And in some ways that might be true, but, she doesn't want to give up that power because she's been told and sold by society that giving power up to the man in charge is somehow going to be a bad deal for her, and so she wants to hold on to that part. And your seduction skills and your seduction ability, as well as your sexual ability, but your sexual ability, by the way, is predicated on your seduction skills. The sexual experience is built outside of the bedroom. And if you don't have those, you're not going to be successful. So I do have my pre-enrollment, which is available now for Sesxpionage, which is going to teach you how to seduce. It's, a lot of stuff on the pickup side of it, if you don't have anybody in your life like that yet, but this will help you with girls you're already dating. This will help you with a girl that you haven't been able to get and that you want to get. And this will help you with your long-term relationship. If you don't have these skills dialed in really well, you're just not going to be successful. I mean, what's going to happen is your relationship will degrade and turn into what 85% of them turn into, which are really just at best friendships, glorified friendships. So, and at worst they end or they become very divisive, and that's not fun, right? You don't want to do that. So we'll share this right now without further ado. Grok, who had eyes for the lovely Neela. Once there was a caveman named Grok, who had eyes for the lovely Neela. Neela was the most beautiful cave woman in the tribe, with her sparkling eyes, infectious laughter, and fat booty. But Grok wasn't the only one smitten by her. All the Chads and Tyrones of the land wanted her too. He tried different ways to attract her, showing off his prowess with a spear, doing favors, bringing gifts, and even serenading her under the moonlit sky. But Neela never seemed to return his affections. She was always kind to Grok, but Grok was only 5'10", and Neela only had eyes for the 6-foot-tall Chads, or so he thought. Determined more than ever, Grok decided to do a pickup artist boot camp in a faraway land. He built up his confidence and learned how to talk to hundreds of cave Stacys, even winning the affection of a few. But when Grok came home to use his newfound skills on Neela, he could sense that same disinterest in her eyes. He could get average Stacys to want to bear his children, but could not win over Neela, or any cave woman as beautiful as she. The pickup artistes told Grok it's a numbers game, and that he had to sleep with thousands of drunk Stacys to get a beauty like Neela. Confused, Grok went to the secret societies of different color pills for advice, but all they could offer were different chants of, "Just next her, bro," and "She only bangs Chads," over and over again. If only I could learn real seduction skills to make Neela fall in love with me, Grok thought. Neela went on to live happily ever after, having babies with a man named Og. Og had secretly learned Sesxpionage skills. Og was 5'5". The problem with pickup courses today is that they rely on the numbers game. You talk to hundreds of girls, and finally, a chick wants to sleep with you. And usually, these aren't the women of your dreams. Sesxpionage is my new course that will train you how to actually seduce the women that you want, not just get dates with women who you aren't that excited about. You will learn deep persuasion skills borrowed from the elite corners of the espionage world that will train you how to persuade anyone and how to seduce anyone, from the woman you just met to your wife or girlfriend. Enrollment opens April 22nd and closes on the 26th. Click the link and don't miss this opportunity. It's the only one you'll get this year. All right. I forget to go full screen on that. I'm sitting here sipping my coffee and dicking around in the corner, but whatever. So yeah, that's that. And so you guys need to get on there. Some of your advice will help me through my relationships. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I'm here to help you through your relationships and get into those relationships, whether it's casual dating scenarios, getting the girl, sexual relationships, or, long-term successful romantic relationships. That is exactly why I'm here. And then also, of course, for those who I would say are the more elite of my clientele, people who are more serious, we really get into the inner game and the mindset stuff, because the inner game and the mindset stuff is what's going to really help you do well. That's what's going to help you be successful. All the stuff you struggle with can't happen. This right here isn't right. But that said, click that link. I'll put it in the that pre-enroll link. Let me put it in the chat too. So for you guys. All right. So that pre-enrollment's in the chat. Hit the return button. We'll show it on the screen. Hit that thing. You can read about what the course entails. Here's the thing about pre-enrollment. I'm giving away free stuff. I'm giving away pickup skills for a busy man and something called the mission plan dating blueprint. So the mission plan is I'm really excited about that. Actually, that'll be really helpful for a lot of guys, because a lot of guys struggle with the logistics and kind of like they get into, all right, I'm talking to this girl, I get a phone number or whatever I'm trying to do here, right? Well, what do I do next? Like, what's my next step? And they get sort of hung up on that part of it, So the mission plan is sweet, because I use a 5-paragraph op order modified version of that for dating in order to help you set you up to do an analysis for like all your skills and seduction for it to work. And you could use it on an existing relationship too. If you're going on vacation or taking your girl on a date, or if you got a new girl you're trying to, not screw it up with, this helps you control, tells you what bases to cover, how you stay one step ahead logistically, basically. So you're not in that scenario where you're like, okay, the date, things are going well and we're having a drink. Now what do I do next? Do I, okay, well, that was fun, I'll see you later, and that kind of thing. Do I have her come to my place, or do I do a location change, go someplace different? Like, there's all kinds of, but there, if you do this well, if, like, you know how to date well, you guys who have some experience in this know, especially guys in my group, it's like you can take a date, like a simple, like, hey, we're getting together for a drink, turn that into a bigger date. Like, okay, maybe you guys grab some food, maybe you're going for a walk, you end up in another location, and then you end up, it ends up being a really involved and good night. A lot of times you end up going to her place or your place. Sex ends up happening on that first date because you've done a number of different things together, and you turned what could have been a 45-minute get together on and a quick drink, you turn that into a longer fantasy for her, right? A longer kind of excursion. And that's how you seduce. And and maybe that it doesn't end in the bedroom first date. Maybe it happens second or third date, doesn't really matter. Okay, but it's like you have a format that you can sort of follow to keep things moving along. A lot of guys screw the logistics up. They don't have things set up appropriately for themselves. They don't know where to go next, what to do next, what's the next move. And you can't have frame, and you can't lead it into the bedroom and into something more than that if you don't have framing and you don't know where to go and how to do it. If you're waiting for her to help you, you're going to have a lot less success, although she will help you when she's really attracted to you, but it's not what she really wants. She wants a guy who's going to lead her to what she wants, which is to have, a fun time, great sex, all that good stuff. Now, today, we're going to do a little bit longer show today because I haven't done that in a while. I've been doing these little clips with some little skill sets in there for you guys. And I appreciate you guys too. I appreciate my audience. It's weird how YouTube is, because I, was doing these little, I was doing more of these little clips or whatever, and changed it up a little bit. I was doing only one show a week in a long format on Tuesdays. Usually I had to change the time. I was doing it at noon, but I have appointments now in the afternoon that makes me have to shift things more to like the 11:15. I'm playing with the time a little bit, but I was doing this long form hour to hour and a half shows, and those are doing really well, getting a few thousand views. And then I switch it to 10 to 20 minute video talks, and I start doing them on a regular basis, and it's like algorithms are dead again. Like I'm down to less than 1,000 views on those. It's the strangest thing. So don't know, whatever. I'm just going to keep doing what I do, and hopefully you guys can, hopefully you guys can, get something out of it, right? And you guys remember to click on my stuff. Could you make a video on how to seduce women during a nuclear winter? I don't know where you're from, man. Are you from the Eastern Europe? Are you out in Ukraine, dude? Do we need some help? So yeah, maybe. It's like that is an interesting thought problem. I don't know if I'm going to do that video, to be honest, because I don't think that's the scenario people are in. But the interesting idea of like, okay, getting girls in a serious combat zone where it's a serious survival situation. It's a funny question because you have all these preppers and stuff, right? Who in the United States, a lot of them, and some of them have they do cool stuff. They got cool skills. I'm not slamming on you. I'm a bit of a prepared person, I would like to say myself. However, certainly not like some people are, but I'm pretty well prepared for the disaster. I can't help but think about those things with my my combat experience and military experience. It's just something that happens. You think about those things, you just naturally prepare for some stuff. But that being said, like, it's funny, you have these guys getting really involved in prepping. They get involved in these like wild fantasy scenarios of Red Dawn and government collapse and all kinds of stuff. And they're not even familiar with how war's being waged today with drones and and satellite imagery and everything else. They have no idea what's going on, number one. And number two, it's like what you're prepping for is going on right now. It's going on right now in other parts of the world and has been throughout history. You just happen to now live there. People in the Ukraine right now have had that scenario, have had economic and social collapse in their places turned into a war zone. Iraq had that. Afghanistan roughly was always kind of in trouble for a while. Like they've been in trouble for a long time, but they've had periods of stability. How about Israel right now? Right. So like you got, if you talk about Gaza Strip, and I want to make this a political thing that's like supercharged for people, but I mean, you'd have these places of the world where it is a prepper scenario. And interesting thing is how does mating, dating, and banging and relationships pan out there? And I'll give you a clue. It goes right back into more of a case selected scenario. A lot of the, we could say more feminine men into their emotions, playing guitar, and, male feminists and wokies and stuff. They don't survive in those scenarios. They don't get the girls either. Right? Women become roughly very pragmatic and very conservative and lean towards the dudes who offer resources and protection and are definitely more of that alpha type leader in that sense. That they don't have this ambiguity. All right. All of the we'll say, masculinity is bad, and can't we all just be feminine versions of ourselves thing that happens in female polyamory and stuff, right? This stuff that happens in the dating world today because of because it happens because we're in a safe area, in a peaceful, relatively peaceful place, and people have the freedoms and the safety to have these ideas, right? And to have mating patterns, dating patterns like that. I mean, all this unhinged, hookup culture, notch count collecting stuff, women discarding guys and taking their money through divorce, these things. And I'm not saying guys don't do, things to women either, but all the crap that goes on, that's a first world problem, man. Let me tell you, you go to these other places, it's like, no, I'm going to gravitate towards the dude who's going to beat ass and be able to have some money in the bank, dude. I mean, it is just what it is, man. It is what it is. So that's not the topic for today, but that was such a funny comment about doing a video on how to get women in a nuclear winter, like how to seduce women in a nuclear winter. Starts off, you really have to be that alpha male, man. Like that's what happens. We get a scenario, we're surviving. They're going to go towards the men that are going to be able to help them survive. That is no question there. And they all know it too. They're just banking on, they're banking on not having to do that. My three rooms in the cellar can make me Ivo, man. Hell yeah, it can, bro. Hell yeah. Absolutely. Maybe a couple of bags of grain, and some extra ammo. You're a high value man right now. So I wanted to share with you. So to the topic though, which is actually on our first world problems, which is our maintaining our love and declining marriage rates. All right. We're going to talk about that. It's really involves about we talk about maintaining frame and stuff like that. And all that stuff has to be maintained through maintaining desire. Right. And so I'm going to kind of read through this little article where I'll talk about pros and cons. What sometimes I like to do is look at what is given as mainstream narratives, mainstream advice, and sort of highlight what's good about it, what also is not good about it. Because there are certain key things that are missing with mainstream advice that is so close. Some of it is so close to being good. Like I love stuff out of the Gottman Institute, for example. Some of their stuff, and because they were observing couples and putting it to research, some of their stuff on understanding the four horsemen, for example, you know what that is, which is, the criticism, contemptuous behavior, defensiveness, stonewalling, like those observations. I use that all the time because they're really good. There's stuff that comes out of the research world, but the problem is they're missing components, and the components that they're missing, they're afraid to talk about. not specifically the Gottmans. I don't know. It's not like I've talked to them to know, but it's just academia in general. They're afraid to talk about certain aspects of men and women, and male-female dynamics. And because they're afraid to talk about it, they don't insert these very important variables into their solution set for maintaining healthy, happy relationships. Okay. One of those important variables, very important, is power dynamic. And it's really interesting because, the BDSM community understands power dynamic. Elements, not all, but elements of the gay community understands power dynamic, interestingly enough. But like heterosexual couples go into counseling, no discussion or even understanding of what it is happening in terms of what power dynamic. You guys might be listening to me going, what do you mean by power dynamic? Like, what are you talking about? Exactly. You should know what this is, but you don't, because it's not talked about in mainstream stuff, because power dynamic assumes that things are not equal in a relationship. That's what makes me so controversial. That's why I have to fight algorithms, because equality isn't real. And I say that. And I don't mean like, I'm not some like crazy racist, misogynist person who thinks women shouldn't have opportunity and, the races aren't equal. And, like, come on, this is not a racial argument. This is not an attempt to say women shouldn't be in the workplace or try to reduce opportunities for women out there. Absolutely not. That's not what it immediately gets turned into that as soon as you say something counterintuitive to the social narrative. And the social narrative, by the way, is designed for women. It's not designed for you as a man. Most of my audience are men. And so when I say for you, that's talking about you with dudes with penises. All right. The social narrative is not there to help you. It's there to help women and advanced women. It's gynocentric. That's the nature of it. It's centered around female perspectives and views and goals, and caters to those sensibilities. It doesn't mean you can't survive and thrive as a man in society today, but it just understand that the general cultural narrative revolves around women. Okay. It's gynocentric. If you don't agree, say something right now in the chat and I will explain further. If you think I'm wrong with what I just said, please bring it up in a respectful way. I'm happy to debate it with you. In fact, I'm working. I got to talk to one of my business partner here about doing a Friday show where we do a live call-in, maybe, because that would be a lot of fun. And so if you guys disagree, we can talk about these things. You know what I mean? But really, that's the social narrative tends to be gynocentric. And with that being the case, who benefits from a narrative of equality? Let's think about this for a minute. And let's differentiate what I mean. Like, so equality, I'm talking about equal outcomes or equal shares, regardless of labor or effort, And so there's two kind of opposing ideas. You got fairness. Well, I'll give you definitions. You got fairness, and then you have equality, equal, right? And so fairness tends to be a more male-centered view. They've done research on this, by the way. If you get a group of 3 dudes together, and let's say they're going to go into business or do something together, and one guy produces 50% of the results and has, the commensurate investment into the project. Another guy is 30%, and another guy is 20%. If they profit from that project and they split the profits up, commensurate to the investment and effort of the 3 individuals involved, men would say, okay, you get 50% of the profit because you put in 50%. You put in 30, you get 30, you put in 20, you get 20. That would work. That's from a male-centered view, usually that's considered fair. And that's considered fair by definition, really, when you think about it. Women tend to have more of a communal way of looking at things, and this has to do with evolution. And can be, by the way, very useful. I'm not even slamming on this as a way of thinking, because sometimes the communal way of thinking is a useful way of thinking. I wouldn't want to apply it to economics. right, and become communist, for example. That's not, we know that's a failure, but there is certain circumstances where it doesn't matter. Okay, like in small groups or small situations, we're all, Becky puts in 50%, Amy puts in 30%, and Tara puts in 20, but they all share equally in the proceeds. There's certain scenarios where that might be agreed upon and okay. And because I'm a dude, I have a hard time thinking of what those scenarios would be. But I could imagine there would be a scenario, maybe I'm only gonna end up saying something that's gonna make me sound like a dick, like maybe a bake sale at a PTA situation or a church situation. Like, I can't help the misogynist brain of mine, but other than give a fucking terrible example of when a communal thing is good, I don't know. But I'm sure there's better examples than that. But there's examples where maybe equal outcome or whatever, despite labor effort, might be okay, and women do tend to go towards that. The reason women tend to go towards that is because that elevates people from the bottom. And so this equality narrative, okay, equality in terms of outcomes is not fair. Okay, because that means somebody's going to do more work and get less, right? But what it does is it elevates people from the bottom. And that's what that is designed to do. Well, evolutionarily speaking, in terms of power, resources, and getting needs met, women were at the bottom. Okay, they had less power physically, and they had less, abilities to be able to procure resources, given the fact they carried babies. Even if even though the woman was a great hunter herself, if she wanted to have babies, man, she wasn't going to be a great hunter for about a year or two back in evolutionary times. I mean, nowadays with medical science, she can be kicked back out there in a few days, maybe a week or so. But and then of course the communal daycare takes care of the kid. But today, though, or back then rather, I mean, it was a medical situation, for a woman to be pregnant. She couldn't do a lot of things that would disrupt that pregnancy. Where's the medical intervention if something goes wrong? You know what I mean? After the pregnancy, there's this much longer recovery and stuff she needs to be worried about for her health and for the health of the baby, or else, kid's going to die. She's going to die. You don't have a hospital to run to if things go wrong, right? Back in our evolutionary times. So women tended to rely on the greater social, fabric, social situation that they were in to get their needs met, meaning they were always coming from the bottom. And this is why they're evolutionarily designed to think in terms of equality, not in terms of fairness, because there's that thing. Well, okay, that it's like the guys are thinking fairness, but then they're thinking fairness in terms of like, well, Bob is collecting 50% of the resources on this project, but not just for him though. Bob's collecting that 50% also for his family, maybe his 2 wives, a couple kids, and his mom, his elderly parents. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how that would work in a tribal communal situation, is that you had fairness at the top, and then people who were relying on that resource providing male would, get shares given to them essentially, right? And so women are a little bit more designed for this equality. So that's why they come to relationships a lot of times with a social narrative and a lot of things with this idea that, well, we have to have equal say and it's 50-50 in a relationship and that we share everything. Because if you make, $200,000 as a guy and, your wife makes 20, you guys share everything. You know what? There's actually a good example that isn't quite my bake sale PTA analogy. A marriage or a relationship like that. It's okay that, as a couple, if she only makes 20 grand or makes $0 even, and he makes $200,000, that's $200,000 for both of them, for that family unit. That's okay. She shares in that because she's in a relationship. That's part of the benefit of her being in a marriage. And that's assuming that the guy is happy that she's there. and that he'll take care of her. That's the agreement he signed up for. You know what I mean? Now I'm not so sure that he should have half of his shit taken from him if she stops abiding by the agreement and things go south and they have to get a divorce. If that's the reason, especially for the divorce, I don't know it's not fair that she would take half of his, stuff, right? For that. But that would be something to maybe agree on in paperwork ahead of time. That's what prenups and stuff are for, right? But at any rate, so guys are used to having fairness, and meaning that they're, in their relationships, there needs to be responsibility for what he's providing and all that. A man's taking on responsibility, but he has to have authority also. He can't just, and where the narrative today is that men give up their authority, but have the responsibility, that the authority is distributed equally amongst the male and female partner, but the responsibility ends up lying on the man, usually, especially if he's the higher income earner, which is usually the case. So you have a guy who's has to provide for his family, and then a woman who's, providing her companionship and, complementing that unit as a good wife, let's say, but she wants equal say, even though he's not, you know what I mean? He's necessarily bringing in more. So she wants a equal level of authority with this guy who has more of the responsibility. Does that make sense? And that's not a fair situation. That's not good, And so what that means is, though, because women want the shit that women say, though, here's another thing, man. They say they want equal or shared responsibility, but the reality is they want to be in charge of it or control of it when they don't trust the guy that they're with. And that's what Frame's about too. So when she doesn't have the trust for the decisions of the guy that she's with, then she wants more power. She doesn't want it 50-50. That's just something she says to allow the guy to give up his power. She wants the guy to give up his authority under the guise of, let's make this 50-50, but really she's going to use emotional manipulation and logistical manipulation in order to take more than 50% of that power. So what you have is a scenario. Here's, if I can break this down, because it's a little bit cerebral, okay? But breaking this down, it's like the guy agrees and she's believing that he agrees to be in this 50-50 partnership, all right, where he gives up that 50% of the authority. If that's what she believes he's willing to do, then what happens is she goes, I can't trust his authority. He was willing to give up authority to be a 50-50 equal partner with me. That means that he is a weaker leader with less to offer in terms of leadership and decision-making abilities. Therefore, that's a message to the unconscious mind of hers. The message, if you have all the power and then you go, you know what, I'm going to give up half and to you so we can be 50-50 partners. What you're saying is, I am not the most capable person in this relationship. And so I need to give you more power because of my lack of capability, quite frankly. That is the message that sort of gets sent, whether he means to send that or not. And so then what ends up happening is she goes, well, shit, I don't know that I can trust this guy's decision-making who is willing to just give up his power and authority in his frame like that. So I think what I need to do is take over. And I don't want to insult him or upset him because he has more physical power and, he makes more money than I do. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take power and take things over a bit and be the stronger force in this relationship because I can't trust his decisions. And that gets illustrated by narratives about men, doesn't it? The bumbling sitcom husband and father, who can't get anything right. That like, archetype has been around for a long time. That comes from this sort of idea that this guy who is the more agreeable guy is less capable. You see, agreeableness, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be like, should have zero agreeableness. That would be bad. But having a higher degree of agreeableness to be willing to compromise everything, which, by the way, that's in the Gottman model, which is why I don't just sit here as a licensed counselor or something teaching you the Gottman model, because if I did that, you'd be in trouble, just like most people who try to follow that model. And no offense to them, it's just a flawed model. The model is that they're compromising all the time. And compromise is not a recipe for success in a relationship, because there's a power dynamic. And when you give up power as a man, what happens is you're illustrating your lack of authority, your lack of ability. And so now she can't trust you. You think I'm being more agreeable by, and yeah, we work on things together, babe. Let's 50-50. That's it. Go woman, kind of thing. Well, you think you're just being more agreeable and cool to your girl or whatever, and just playing the game even a lot of times with guys. But what happens is by doing that, he sends a message, which is, I'm not a capable leader. And so now you've given up power and said, I'm not a capable leader. I need you to help me lead. And she goes, shit, I don't think I can trust him. I better take over some of this. I'm going to not do it in a male way, like just push him around, although some women graduate to that eventually. So some women go right to that because that's what they grew up with. But a lot of times what it happens is it turns into, I'm going to take the power in this relationship based on logistical and emotional manipulation. And so now it's like he finds himself in the scenario where all the decisions are being made by her emotions. We come and talk about the decisions, and then she says, well, I don't agree. And then he goes, well, I don't agree either. And then she gets sad and mad, and then does sad and mad things for days and weeks, which makes him suffer. And he just wants to not suffer and have the drama go away, because he has all the responsibility as a man. He has a burden of performance and responsibility he needs to go get back to. And all this drama takes away from that responsibility. Remember, he doesn't have any authority. He gave that up, but he has the responsibility though. And so he's got to go do his responsibilities. And so he just wants the drama to go away. So then he's like, okay, honey, we'll do whatever you say. Well, here's our compromise, which is really what you want. Well, how about, it ends up being a placate to her emotions. She ends up using her emotions, leveraging things like sex, leveraging things like, well, I can't have sex when I'm stressed out. Can't have sex when I'm unhappy. Oh, we are compromising. You're not doing what I want. I'm unhappy. I'm stressed. So no sex. Okay. And drama. Oh boy. Okay. We'll do it your way, honey. Whatever. I'm getting along to get along. He turns into that fucking guy. And then I say, don't be that guy. And women go, freak out and call me names. I'm a creepy, misogynist, terrible man. 10 years ago, I wasn't that creepy. Now that I'm in my 40s, I'm definitely creepy and a terrible misogynist. Now never mind that there are plenty of girls, including my own girl, is attracted to me. Okay, they find me very attractive because of who I am and how I behave. But, people outside of that are going, why doesn't he just be complacent? Why doesn't he tell men to get along and to compromise? Right? And it's like, I don't tell men to do that because it's slavery. Okay. Authority, or rather responsibilities with no authority, is slavery. And giving up your power for a 50-50 relationship is you demonstrating a lack of capability and a recipe for her to take the frame in the relationship, and for you to become a slave, and for her to become miserable. She'll be miserable with you as you try and try and try and do things to make things better, to make it work. You could be the perfect husband doing all things, and she'll fucking hate you. And she'll cheat on you too. Trust me on that. I have plenty of guys in consults. Not every girl will cheat on you, but plenty will, because they're unhappy. They're unsatisfied. They've cut themselves off sexually in order to gain power, but yet they still want sex. So what are they going to do? You know what I mean? They either become more and more frigid, their weight, the scale number on their weight becomes greater, their hair becomes shorter, their voice gets deeper, and their demeanor gets bitchier as they get less and less sex and have less and less orgasms, because they don't like you. And they don't like you because you gave up your authority trying to be an agreeable person and a nice guy. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I love that saying. But that's actually, you know, who started that one wasn't Rich, though. Although Rich is good to say it. Who started that one was Gendernomics guy. Carl used to be on Rule Zero. He came up with that, I think. That's what he had. I heard that from him. He has those books, Gendernomics. Have not heard or seen Carl is Missing in Action, probably because he's living his life and probably in a healthy relationship and doing well. He never made money off of the men's help space, so it doesn't benefit him really to even be here. But we miss Carl, though. He was good, man. He had a lot of good little things to say. That was one of them, was the death by 1,000 cuts. Pretty good. So the point is, though, power dynamic is just one example. And so this is why I like to take these little things from the mainstream world and kind of break them down, because I can look at what's missing. By the way, power dynamic, it's something I talk more about in my mastermind program, because the guys are with me longer. And so we can train this stuff. These are behaviors you have to train, but to keep it brief, is that there is no equality in a relationship. There's a power dynamic. And either you and your girl are going to fight for power. Okay. You would be in a dynamic where you're fighting for power, or you can have an agreed upon power dynamic. All right. So example of successful relationships is the Christian relationships and the Muslim relationships, where they have the man as the head of household. Jewish too. So they'll say the big three Abrahamic religions. Now there's a lot of Christian trad con grifting by my Christian trad grift stuff bullshit on the internet, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who actually go to church, who actually go to mosque, who actually go to, do Jewish things, whatever. I'm talking about people who actually participate, and they have a format for the relationships based on their culture or their traditions. I'm going to give them, I've been critical of the leadership and narratives of the religious community sometimes, where it needs to be said. Okay. And sometimes of like the Daily Wire types who are, have a bit, there's some flaws there, but there's some good things there too. So I'm not trying to just smash on people. It's not about trying to dunk on anybody. It's just trying to do the right thing for you guys. Right. And so one of those things, though, is, one thing that some of them do get right is that they can recognize a power dynamic. If it's not flawed and screwed up, because, a lot of the churches are infiltrated now with these very feminist ideas, many of them not biblical or not scriptural in any sense, but the ones that kind of maintain the, their, I guess you could say, a more traditional view of those scriptures and kind of have an identity behind it, you'll have the wife who is more submissive, and there's different little subcultures of, taken in hand and different things like that, where, you domestic discipline, a whole nother thing, concept that might blow somebody's minds. But there's these dynamics there where they know it's not 50-50 compromise. They know that there is a power dynamic where there's a definite leader and a definite, we'll say, follower, but not just a blind follower, but definite, we'll say, support. Okay. And it's important that the leader satisfies the needs of who they're leading in order to accomplish the mission. So in the case of the man leading, the woman has definite say, more say than anybody else, okay, and has definite input, and her her ideas and input are important, and sometimes her plan or her solutions will get selected as the as what to do because it's the better thing, it's a better idea. If my girl has brought things up to me and we've done it her way before, not, you know what I mean, because it's a better idea, that's okay. All right, but that doesn't, just because we do something her way, that doesn't mean she's in charge of it. If I got a platoon full of guys and one of my squad leaders says, hey, we should do it this way, and I say, hey dude, you're right, we're gonna do it your way, let's do it. That doesn't make him now the platoon sergeant. It just means that he's got a good idea, and a good leader listens and takes, considers who he's leading, and takes that talent and delegates things. And you rely on that. You don't just, you're not just like blindly like expecting people to blindly follow you or whatever. I mean, it's a relationship, right? And so it's a healthy relationship, in fact. And so if more women and men agreed on a power dynamic, which generally the evolutionary default will be to have the man being in charge of that power dynamic, meaning the man has the authority and the responsibility. She has some responsibilities though as well, and authority over herself and what's delegated to her as things that needs to be her lane, her things she's taking care of. Then you have a very good division of labor and a very good decision-making paradigm where instead of arguing and fighting and struggling for power, a guy is at the helm and he's making decisions, but he's listening and considering his wife. And because he's listening and considering his wife, and I'll use wife and husband here because that's but he could be just LTR with no marriage or whatever, and that's fine. But because she's being listened to, heard, considered, right? Understood. She trusts the guy she's with. And she trusts, of course, herself, who picked that guy, and so now we have less fighting, less bullshit, in better relationships, in better solutions to problems, and healthier sex lives, and all the things. All right. So that's the power dynamic. You have to have that power dynamic sorted out, or else your relationship is going to be a power struggle. Most of you guys can look back to your breakups, look back to your problems that you've had with girls in your life. And a lot of times it came down to a power dynamic. She was just going to she was going to cross your boundary no matter what. And the only reason why she was going to do it was just to tell you and let you know you're not in charge. She was not accepting a power dynamic. She wanted to let you know that she's strong and independent. You don't have any power over her. And you said, wait a second, that upsets me and frustrates me. And my gorilla brain now wants to smash you. And so you got mad, but you couldn't smash her, because you're not allowed. And that's probably a good thing. And so you instead, would get mad or get emotional or qualify to her, or, now, or maybe get even, toxic towards her because she's not, falling into your frame and not following a power dynamic that that you need in order for a healthy, happy situation. And it just, it just falls apart. Or you guys gave up your power and then you found some girl not trusting your leadership, steamrolling all over you and treating you like you're her little bitch. These things aren't good. These things aren't good. Guys got really valid questions and stuff, man. Make sure you throw a little soup or something in there. I have these weird, what are they? Membership tiers or something. I don't know. I got to figure that out though. I haven't rolled them out yet because I don't want to fuck it up for you guys who are in the. But all right, so let's go through this article anyway. I'm kind of all over the place. Maintaining your marriage amidst chaos. That's what it's called. I could screen share it. I'm not going to though. Words on a page. Something by the Foundation Restoration by Ashley McIlwain. Some Irish name, sounds like. So she writes, work, make dinner, laundry, dishes, work, get groceries, run to the post office, church, coffee with a friend, dinner with friends, work, clean the house, tackle house projects. She's got a lot of dots in between these things, by the way. Call my family, work, network, breakfast, devotions, exercise, baby shower, work, date, night, visitors, work, pack lunches, seminar, birthday, work. And she's like, breathe. Then she goes, it amazes me how many directions I am constantly pulled. The to-do list goes on and on endlessly. And for every one thing I check off, another 3 get added. There are times when I just want to scream at the top of my lungs, hide under my covers of my bed, run until I can't feel a thing, cry my eyes out because I feel so overwhelmed, exhausted, and inadequate. There's never enough time in the day to do it all. Weeks, months, and years zoom by, and sometimes I feel like I'm missing out on it all because I'm chasing my tail, trying to do everything for everyone all the time. All right. That's the beginning of this article. Now, it's just like what I said in the beginning of this thing. Okay. Women have, I have to, let me, look at that. Paul is so knowledgeable and generous. Thank you. Thank you very much. I got to float my own boat today, man. Thank you. But I appreciate the compliments and the comments. Well, this is a funny one. Okay. We can send kids to boot camps. Why not wives? Dude, actually, there's some programs out there for it. The problem is, I don't think they'll want to listen or follow, most of which. And it would be nice if they did, right? It would be nice if they did, but I don't know that they're willing to. But that being said, that's kind of our jobs too. We're boot camp. That's the thing. Being in a relationship with you should be like boot camp in a way. You know, she's going to have to learn how to be in a relationship. Now, most likely, you know, she's not had good experiences, has not had good successes, and has not been with a guy who knows how to lead. I mean, if we're looking at stats, it's probably true. And if she ever was with a guy who knew how to lead, maybe he discarded her before anything could get going because of how she was. So if she gets in a relationship with you, boot camp it is. And if she can't pass through boot camp, well, you'll have a nice couple years then. And then you can find a hotter version or enjoy your time by yourself. Like, I don't view relationship success as staying together to the detriment of either person. Relationship success means that both people are together and happy, or both people discover that they can't really work together that well and they get out of it and are happy. If you had a relationship that lasted a couple years, had great sex, had a great time, did cool stuff, you know, but she just wasn't a good match to continue with or long term, and you guys broke up and, you know, you're able to salvage your life, that is a success. It may not be the goal, but that's a success. You know, if you ruin your life, zero yourself out, put yourself in the toilet over a relationship, that's not a success. I would consider that a relationship failure. Okay. I would consider those staying in a relationship that you or your girl are unhappy in and perpetually unhappy, to use the word happiness again, but you know that you're just not satisfied, not happy. It's not good for you. And it's not good for her. And it's just sticking it out to stick out. That is not success. That is a worse failure, in my opinion, probably than getting zeroed out. At least if you're zeroed out, you get to start over. I'd rather get zeroed out and start over with my whole life at 70 years old than be stuck in a miserable situation with a miserable C word, you know, and having to live out the rest of my life like that. There's too many beautiful things on earth for me to have my life sucked away by some woman. I hope you guys have that mentality too. You know, she's either a compliment or she gets out. That should be the standard, but people have their attachment problems. Anyway, you'll notice though, from the beginning of this thing, it's the narrative that you hear all the time, which is I'm doing everything for everybody. This is what happens when a woman gives up her hypergamous mating imperative and says, I am cashing in and settling down. She views even the sexual version of herself as something she's giving up for everybody else. I can't bang Chads anymore. I'm giving that up. And hopefully, if she didn't marry a Chad or someone she views as that, it doesn't need to be the archetypical Chad, but somebody who has seduction skills so that she sees him as the best. And that means as the best in terms of desire and attraction, not just provisioning or not just nice guy qualities, right? If she sees that dude as the best, then she's happy that she cashed it in. If she doesn't, then what happens is this. I gave up everything for everybody. And then how does her day go? Everything's miserable. Work, making dinners miserable, laundry, dishes, getting the groceries miserable. Got to run to the post office. Oh boy, woe is me. I'm a slave. Church, miserable church. Coffee with a friend is miserable, miserable. Dinner with friends also not for her. Miserable, miserable. And date nights, miserable. That got thrown in there. Having visitors come, miserable, right? Everything sucks. Everything sucks when you're a woman. Right? And you have to complain about something. That's what you end up with. She gave up her mating imperative to be in misery, where now even going out with a friend is just another thing I'm saddled with. I have to touch my husband's wiener. Oh God, woe is me. I'm saddled with so many responsibilities. He touches wiener. Did you come yet? This is the this is you, and you're stuck here. You need to stop doing this. Stop it. Just stop. Either seduce the shit out of her and flip that all around and take the frame back, or do that. And if she fails at being able to fall into it, cool, dump her. All right. I mean, don't do it immediately. You're going to try to work things out, of course, if you're married, obviously, but don't. Okay. But understand, this is what happens when a woman's not happy, is that she perceives everything she's doing as some sort of, task, some sort of, what's the word to use for it? Some sort of burden, even hang out with her friends is a burden. Like, come on. She doesn't have any enjoyment in anything she's doing. They're all burdens. And she just wants to scream at the top of her lungs and hide under her covers. This is a burden. Everything sucks. Especially you. You suck, guy who married her. Like, that's her mindset. And that's not good. Obviously. So what do you do about this? Well, first of all, this just goes to show, all right? This just goes to show that you can't let them lead themselves, because they will lead them. It's like, all right, you ever been in driver's training? And this is why YouTube hates me. This is where I get labeled misogynist again, by observing things that are true. So like, you ever, driving instructor, he's sitting in the, the passenger seat, and he's got that brake. He's got the little brake on, the oh shit brake on his side, so he can brake the car. You know what I mean? You guys, I don't know. They used to have this back in the day. I don't know if they still do for driver's training. And then, of course, you could grab the steering wheel and steer you. It's like she's in driver's training, but you're the instructor. And like any decision she has with her life is like her behind the wheel trying to steer into moving traffic, or trying to steer into a pole or a wall or off a cliff. And then you're there as the husband with the brake and the ability to grab the wheel. No, don't go towards the brick wall. Stay. The road is there. Okay. All right. Now you're going towards the ditch. All right. Well, don't kill yourself there. You're going to kill both of us. Let's get you back on track. Break. Stop what you're doing. Let's get back things going. That's you as the leader and the husband. You are leading. You're the driver's instructor while she tries to steer things in the wall. Left things to her own devices. Left to her own devices, it turns into this narrative. Everything's terrible. I'm a victim of myself. And anything I do, I can't enjoy. And I just want to cry and put my head in my covers. That's what happens when in a relationship and there isn't a healthy, recognized power dynamic with you in charge. Why does that happen? Because she doesn't feel safe. And so now to credit some of the women who might feel this way, I understand why they feel this way, because from her perspective, she doesn't have any sense of security. And therefore, she feels like she has to do all these things to have this sense of security. She has no recognized power dynamic where she trusts the guy in her life to be leading in the right direction where she can just relax and be a girl. Now, everything she does, including meeting up with a friend, is now a burden to her because she sees all of these things as part of some greater strategy to ensure that she's going to be okay in life, because she doesn't have a guy she can trust to cry on his shoulder, to tell him what she needs, or to have him, leading and doing his part, not just financially, but whatever else he's promised, and whatever else, is happening there, even just being a good masculine presence. She doesn't have that. She has a partner, an equal partnership, a business partner. And she feels like if she doesn't do all these things, she's not pulling up her end of the deal, and she's not going to be safe and secure in the world. And so everything feels like a burden, including sex with you. If she doesn't do that, she's not a good wife. Like, this is the shit that goes on in their head. You got to break that pattern as the guy in charge. You got to stop all that nonsense. You got to break that pattern by taking up the authority and the responsibility in the relationship for the things that and then delegating responsibilities, not just letting her run her life. She can't do that on her own, or it turns into this. If she wants to run her life on her own, she can be single and she can do this whole miserable fucking charade all by herself. All right. But if she wants the protection and love of a relationship, she's going to have to surrender to that relationship a little bit. It doesn't mean that she's incapable or a bad person or not strong enough or whatever. That's nonsense narratives from society that just craps all over women. That's why it's hard for women, because they get unreasonable standards put on them, and so we don't want that. You know what I mean? You don't need to put an unreasonable standard on your girl. You just need to take charge. Okay. So you'll continue reading. I have no doubt nearly every single person reading this feels the same way or has felt that way at some point in their life. She has to say single person, but what she means is woman. Let's be real. Okay. Different demands, but same overextended, barely able to breathe. How can I maintain this space of life feeling? You're drowning in the busyness, and it feels like there's not a thing you can do about it. For the most part, for most of my life, I've pushed myself to limits to achieve all the things, whatever. I'm gonna skim this and paraphrase. My schedule's always jam-packed. I usually stretch the limits. Yet somehow thinking things couldn't possibly get busier, the chaos compounds. To be completely honest, there's a sense of pride that comes along with being busy. And there's a social narrative I wanted to point out. There's a sense of pride that comes along with being busy. Our cultural values being overextended because that somehow is equated to being successful and important. So that's what the feminist narrative is that if she is not overextended and miserable because of it, because she has to be a perfect mom, a perfect sexual diva, a perfect attractive woman to other men outside of the relationship, because remember, it's feminism and they want that, and a perfect employee, and making enough money to be a solid breadwinner if she wanted to be, and a perfect parent, and a perfect friend. She's not all those things in perfection. The duties of a woman was not all those things, was a fraction of those things. But now she has to do all those things, and she has to be really, really good at them all. And she has to hate her life because of it, or else she's not successful. She's not important. Remember the whole good chimp, bad chimp thing for women, and then guys are useful chimps or, loser chimps, right? So for her to be considered, for her monkey brain to think she's a good chimp, she has to do all and be everything and be miserable. That's the other part. And if she's not all those things, then she's not a good girl. You see, that's a major drive. And the good chimp thing is a drive in our DNA, for women. It's their drive. Ours is to be considered useful as men. So it's an existential threat. And the world is telling her if she is not a miserable fuck who feels like she's a victim of herself and doing all of these things, right, that somehow she's not a good girl. And you have to break that narrative in your relationship. You have to say, no, that's not how we look at yourself. That's not how I value you. That's not how we value each other. All right. being miserable and having to have this crazy unreasonable standard, and that if you don't meet this standard, that you're not somehow not useful, not important, not good. Meanwhile, the things that I would value you for, like being pleasant, being happy and fun, being sexual, having, having a good positive mindset, having gratitude, like all the things that I would as a man value you for, you don't think that makes you valuable. Instead, it's these other things. Nope, we can't do that. That's not how we do relationships. That's wrong. That's a recipe for miserable people. We're not miserable people. Here's what happy people, here's what people who are successful actually in their relationships do. Not that bullshit. You have to instill that frame. Okay, that's your job as a guy. Otherwise, this is the narrative she follows. One day I was feeling so irritated with my husband. Wow, surprise, surprise. And I was in one of those I want to cry my eyes out moments. And then I had an epiphany. My life is so busy that I have crowded out one of the biggest blessings and important people in my life, Steve. Well, way to go, Steve. My husband. When we're together, I feel like I can keep putting one foot in front of the other. Being able to cry on his shoulders, go before the Lord and tidied in prayer. Well, she's got a religious background. Good. Laugh until our bellies hurt. Share our deepest fears and greatest dreams. That's what invigorates, strengthens, and encourages me. Notice how when she's talking about being in her husband's frame, how she starts to sound like a woman again. A woman that would be a good wife, a good companion to Steve in this case. Notice how she sounds like that once she starts framing her mind, being with him and putting him at the helm of her life. Right? The Lord knew. I didn't even know this was coming from a Christian thing. That's okay. That's okay. It's good. The Lord knew what he was doing when he gifted us with marriage. And then scripture, the helpmate, whatever, Genesis, whom we desperately want and need to cry, laugh, talk, and dream with. Yet when life is pulling us in a million directions, usually our spouse is the first thing to get bumped on the back burner. I'm guilty as charged. Yeah, so she's referring to some of the good little scripture things in the Christian stuff. The helpmate from Genesis 2:18 there, all right? Where she's talking about, hey, I'm supposed to be this wife that's a helpmate to my husband, and what am I doing? I'm following a social narrative, which is from the world. Sorry, I'm going to put on my little Christian philosophy hat on for a second. From the world, which is this sort of feminized narrative of do everything, unreasonable standards, and be a victim of it also, and be miserable, and push that misery all on your husband and make it his fault. Like that, all that stuff is from the social narrative. And she's realizing, hey, wait a second, that's not how things are supposed to be. I'm pretty miserable. And you know what? When I'm with this guy and in his frame, things seem to just be okay. That's what you need to have in your relationship. Okay. She needs to not be doing this other thing. She needs to be with you and in your frame, with you properly leading. Okay. And then she's going to feel good and feel one foot after the other, like things are just happening the way they should be. Okay. Now I'm going to criticize Steve. Who Steve is. You suck, Steve. No, I don't know if he sucks, but obviously he was good enough for her to recognize that. If Steve wasn't a good enough guy, though, she wouldn't have had that realization. It would have just been, okay, I'm miserable. Either how do I get out of this, or what can I do to control the situation more? So Steve had high enough, she will say sexual market value, and possibly, her worldview helped. Her Christian-based worldview was helpful here in this case, which is great. And that was that, okay, maybe I need to start prioritizing my husband a little bit. Now, she doesn't know what that means necessarily based on how this article is going. No offense to her. It's not her fault. It's just nobody's telling her. And likely he screwed up here too, because if she's in that messed up state, there's a very good chance that he's not, there's a lack of leadership, and she's left a lot more to her own devices to spin out of control and be unhappy. And he's not catching that early and putting her back in frame. Now, in order to do that, what do you have to have? You have to have skills. You have to have skills in seduction. You have to have skills in persuasion. If you fall to manipulation, as a man, if you become a manipulator, if you can become deceptive, any one of you have done it before, probably, myself included. We've all been guilty of falling to that. It's a very easy thing to do, okay? But if you fall to a deceptive or manipulative tactic, what happens is you might get immediate results, but then you end up losing later on, all right? Because you don't have a complete buy-in from her to be supporting you in the frame of the relationship. You're instead more or less having to coax her into something that's not good. And so I have definitions. It's really important. In Sesxpionage, you'll get this at our first talk because there's an ethics involved. When you really know how to persuade somebody at a deep level and you know to seduce a woman at a deep level, you can actually cause quite a bit of harm. You know, we've seen this amongst the con artists of the world who may only have a fraction of the skills that a guy will walk away with in a course like Sesxpionage, and he can cause great harm, you know, to people around him. So we'll be watching if anybody shows up with those intentions, but this is why I have a screening process too for the mastermind group, because we work longer, more intensely together. I got to make sure that I'm having ethical people creating great relationships coming out of it, not unethical people using, you know, deep persuasion skills for harming others. But that said, though, you need those skills, you know, you need them, and you need to do it from a place of ethics and a place of, you know, good set of morals and values behind it. So your relationship doesn't blow up, and also the right thing to do. But that said, without these skills, this Matt guy could probably use my course. She fell in line. He got lucky. A lot of women don't. A lot of women stay the course and the guy doesn't know what to do about it. And she ends up out in left field, unhappy, feeling all of that, those crappy feelings that she was illustrating in the beginning, and never stepping out of that, not having her guy being a strong leader step in and say, hold on, you're a little bit stressed. Let's set that aside and go do something in the afternoon. Oh, what about this, that, and the other? Clear your schedule. You're doing it. And you're going to do it because I say so, because I'm in charge. And that's it. And then going back to real life. And then let's talk about what things you're up to. And let's talk about what's bothering you. And using that Luca format and making sure that she has your masculine presence. Not necessarily that you're solving her problems for her. You're not giving her all the answers. Okay. She's still in charge of herself. She's just in a relationship with you, and you lead the relationship. So you're just there as the leader of that relationship to give her that strong masculine presence and leadership. So the same activity, whether it's bang night or date night or having a friend over or, you know, going to work or whatever, those same activities are done with appreciation and love and happiness and feeling a sense of satisfaction. Not being done with a sense of, you know, burden because she feels like she's overwhelmed. The feeling of being overwhelmed in a woman goes away with strong masculine presence. Now, understand, though, of course, she has to be healthy enough to accept that presence. A lot of women aren't, but that is what they need, and that's what you have to bring to the table. Having the skills in seduction and persuasion, though, are requirements to make this happen. And you have so much working against you in the world today that you can't be like at a game level that your grandparent, your granddad, or somebody before that was at. You can't even be at a game level of what a happy, couple was at, the guy in that relationship from a generation ago. Because there's so much today in a global sexual marketplace to pull a woman away from a healthy paradigm with you, that your game skills have to be much better than average. Like your SMV doesn't have to be as high as you think it is, but your game skills have to be much higher than what you think it is if you want things to last and to do well. And even if they don't last, just have a good experience, and an ongoing good experiences with women. That requires elevated game skills. And that's like a big myth, because in the internet world of grifting men's help stuff, it's a lot easier if I say you just got to be a high value man and then transfer all that responsibility. I mean, it is your responsibility either way, but transfer all of that onto you. The guy going, you need to be a high value man, solves all your problems, isn't telling you how to make money specifically, usually, isn't telling you how, there's very little advice on how to make that happen for yourself. And the advice that's there, it's up to you. It's up to you to go to the gym. It's up to you to get financially disciplined. It's up to you to get in a trade or get into a career field or whatever, and to monetize yourself and to make the kind of money you need to make. It's like, it's up to you to do those things. You guys are just following an avatar that goes, that's what a man is. I'm going to be a high value man now. And then following that, it's way easier to grift that. You understand? They don't have to offer anything to you, and you'll pay for it and watch it, and they'll get more likes than anything I do, because you're going to go be a high value man now. But really all that shit falls on you, and there's no guidance or skill set involved that's being directly translated to you by most of these people. You want the skill set of being in shape. You're going to have to get a hold of Lane Norton's diet app, and maybe, get a hold of a personal trainer, get a hold of a program of some sort to get your fitness in order, right? If you want to, be better at making money, better hire a business coach, or, go back to school for something in STEM or IT or whatever. You get what I'm saying? It's like the onus ends up being on you, the masculinity, cool guy, high value man guy courses don't do any of that for you. You have to do that now. And so way easier. I'd make my job way easier if I was just like, be a high value man, and just did take a few cool photos of myself being a high value man, just being like, hey, and it's a lot easier. I'd spend more time on YouTube, less time doing consults, course materials, and private calls, because I wouldn't have any skills to have to impart, and I could just put it on you guys and be a big douchebag. But instead of doing that, I'm going to tell you the truth, because the truth is the amount of value you need as a high value man to be successful with hot women is much, much lower than what you think. Because most guys are pretty low value, and women are not just chasing after the high value man like you think they are. Not everything is, not every girl in America or Europe or all over the world is a fresh and fit OnlyFans model. Okay. With those values and those mid looks. A lot of them are prettier. All right. There's a lot of pretty girls out there, and they date guys. You watch them go to a local tavern, go to a local place on a Friday, walk around the park where couples are walking around. You'll see a lot of real average dudes with some pretty good looking women in most places in the world. And that's because they're not just selecting on you being a high value, but what they are selecting on is their perceptions and their emotions. And you sway those emotions and perceptions based on your game, based on your skill and seduction, how you use your mouth. And I don't mean just physically. I mean how you say words, the tone you use, your body language, your eye contact, your understanding, how you're processing that communication, how you're planning ahead, how you're framing things on the date, how you're showing up with no inner game issues, eradicating your inner game problems so that you're not showing up with anxieties, insecurities, and trauma, all the bullshit. So many of you younger guys are talking about trauma all the fucking time in front of women. You just need to get slapped up a little bit. Come visit me in Michigan. I'll give you a couple slaps, a couple of punches in the face. I'll get rid of your trauma for you. At least get you to deal with your own trauma on your own and quit talking about it in front of your women. All right. Because it's not attractive. All right. It's part of game, having a masculine presence is how you communicate that presence to the woman you're with and to the women you're dating, to women in your life. That's what those are skills. Those are learned skills. You can learn how to do that. There's specific skills you can get. That's what I teach. And that's why there's hundreds of hours of course material. That's why there's work to do to learn it. That's why I spend time with people to do it, because I could grift the high value man thing and then not do anything. Market the next. I could just spend all my time. Those guys spend 90% of their time marketing shit and maybe 10% of their time helping you. For me, a lot more time gets spent actually helping you because there's actual skills to learn. And those are the skills that will have you seducing the women of your dreams, the women that you like, and keeping those women around, and it's not to say your value doesn't matter, sure, but, it's the skills that convey the message of your value. And if you don't have the skills, you're just not going to be successful. So to kind of conclude this thing here, so she talks about what can we do to stay connected. And this is where the unfortunate thing, it's not that she's bad or anything. Like, her article is good. It's just from her perspective. There's nothing wrong with her, nothing wrong with her article. I know I kind of shit on the beginning of it, but I did that for a reason, because I want you guys to see it for what it is. And including the few women that do happen to log on, I want you to see how dumb it sounds so you can stop doing that and start working on having a relationship where you can trust. Women need to have a relationship where they can trust the guy she's with and set up a power dynamic where she understands, the girl understands, this guy I picked is leading, and that's going to be good for him, good for you. But at any rate, she writes scheduled date nights. All right. It's all right. So on that, yes, you should be courting and seeing and spending time with your girl. You should be doing things just with her. And that's once a week is a pretty good protocol. I mean, you should have, especially if you're cohabitating, if it's LTR, you should be having some time with your girl every single day, no matter how busy you and her are. But you should have several hours, like an entire evening or afternoon or whatever, which is just you and her, probably at least once a week. And if you're not having that, you're not managing your relationship well. And so you have to allow for that, we'll call it seduction time. And you may have sex more often than this sort of date scenario. You may have sex several times a week. I hope you would. But this is a scenario where takes it beyond sex, and you start treating her like a brand new girl, on these times that you guys are going out. And it doesn't matter if you've been together 20 years or if you just started seeing each other. You want to maintain that. We'll call it a date night once a week. Now, she says scheduled date nights. That's her trying to take control, and she's going to be like, we need to schedule a date night. How about Thursday at this time? You know what I mean? Whatever. Don't let that happen. You man, and you take charge of it. Okay. You take charge of the planning for that. She writes, check in with one another. Of course. Yeah, that's good advice. You should be checking in with your significant other at least, frequently. There's nothing wrong with that. It shouldn't be a disruption of your day, but she should be checking in with you. You should be checking in with her. And there shouldn't be a lot of messy text game stuff going on if you're in a relationship. You should be past that shit. You are the game, and if you don't know how to do that, that's why you come to me. But you are the game. The strategies kind of aren't as necessary. It's a deeper level than that. We'll put it like that. Learn to say no and to let go. That's good advice too. I would say to let go on her end more than anything else, and but learning to say no is good. She needs to be able to respect you when you tell her no and she doesn't get her way. And sometimes she needs to be able to say no too. Like I can't do that right now, or I'm too busy, this, that, the other, or whatever. Now, it doesn't mean that she's in control or in charge, but she's expressing to you that this is not good for me right now, and I hope you're listening. And so those are her 3 points of advice. They're not bad advice. It's not bad to see your person, to schedule, whether it's scheduled, unscheduled, to spend that time. We could call it a date, if you will, with your significant other, to check in regularly and to learn to say no, to let go, especially on the girl side. For her to say no to, it's really her needs to say no to other people. She needs to let go and say no to other people that are not serving her and serving the relationship. You know what I'm saying? So I got to go soon, but I got to get Yuri's in here before I go. That this is Fire. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, man, that's what I'm here for. Appreciate it. Full auto. Hell yeah. Dude, thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Yuri, awesome guy from my group. I love this format of you dissecting mindsets and situations. Hey, man, I love it too. Hope you're doing good, brother. All right. So thanks for that super. That's a huge, huge one. I really appreciate it. So we are towards the end. I can't read all the comments, but oh, here we go. What do we got here? I sat in person with Paul 3 years ago. Dude understands women. I remember owning. Yeah, that was fun, right? That was a good time. Owning the room full of 80 guys. It was good. It was good, man. So yeah, well, and I'll have, if you're in my mastermind as well, we do meetups. I'm trying to get the next one scheduled, amongst doing Sesxpionage and stuff. And so those are just one of the few benefits. So get behind that paywall, at least get on the email list. Like when you go to click, I should mention, you go to click that link to pre-register. You may choose not to pre-register, and that's okay. But you can get on a free emailing list where you get good stuff outside of YouTube and all that. And with that, I'm going to let you go because I got a appointment driving on soon. Thanks again for tuning in, guys.